So hi, welcome to the Press and Media Artist Workshop. And if you're joining us on the video resources page on the website, hello. My name's Izzy. I'm the Press and Media Manager for Vault Festival. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a white British woman in her early 30s with ginger hair in a ponytail, and I've got a nose ring. And I'm wearing a blue sweatshirt with the Great Gatsby on it. And I'm sitting in front of a strange flowery painting and a bookshelf. This is not my flat, as you might be able to tell from the decor.
Hi everyone, my name's Josh. I'm the head of communications for Vault Festival. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a white British male in his mid-30s with ear-length brown hair.
So yeah, we've got a little bit of a presentation, which Josh has a fancier computer than me and can run 2 screens. So it's going to run said presentation. Perfect. Okay, great. So yeah, as I said, this will be about 45 minutes. Hopefully we'll cover kind of quite a bit of stuff, but we will come back to anything we don't at the end. So I thought, first of all, just to kind of start this session, I know that people come to Vault with completely different awarenesses of press. This might be your very first show. You might have done shows in the past, but never have invited press before. So quite a basic thing to kick us off is, what does press mean? What does it mean when we talk about press? So a lot of the time, artists assume that press means reviewers, which it definitely does. But at Vault Press Festival, press engage with us for quite a few things. So it could be arts and culture news stories. You might have seen that when we published our big announcement about the festival, that was kind of everywhere. It might be photo calls or photo stories. So photojournalists specifically coming to do kind of image-based work. Could be diary stories. Something's going on that's a big kind of theatre news story. So for example, we're turning 10 this year, so we'll probably see quite a lot of coverage about that. It could be previews, so write-ups about shows before they happen. It could be features on a particular theme or topic. So a big one in 2020 was sustainability and climate change as an example. We had lots of press kind of writing about shows that were coming up. It could be interviews and Q&As, and obviously reviews is the big one. So quite a wide spectrum of things. And in terms of press at Vault Festival, just to give you a bit of context, I've been the press person at Vault Festival since 2019. This will be my 3rd festival. And yeah, 2020 is a really kind of nice example. Although we shut early, we had some amazing kind of press stats before we closed in week 7. So before that early close, we booked 1,700 press tickets. We logged 1,200 pieces of coverage, and that was kind of show specific coverage, so things like reviews, but also festival coverage every time we got mentioned in the press. And we had members of the press visit us from about 200 plus outlets. And that was everything from the BBC and the New York Times, weirdly, and The Guardian, to kind of brand new bloggers who'd never ever written before, and our Emerging Critics programme, which is something I'll talk about in a bit as well. So real spectrum. So I thought it would also be useful, first of all, to just talk about how Press at Vault works, because lots of you might have emailed me on the press@vaultfestival.com email address and not really known who's on the other side of it. So there's kind of different layers to this. So we have a PR company who look after the festival, the Chloe Nelkin Consulting, CNC, so you might see their name kind of mentioned in different resources on our website. They're our festival PRs, so they are hired by us to pitch the festival as a whole to the press. And that includes writing press releases about Vault, what we're up to, stats, kind of doing the big end of festival release with all of the kind of audience numbers and awards and things like that. But they're kind of responsible for pitching Vault as a package. And then on the other end, you've got your team. So that might be you, it might be your producer, it might be a PR if you're hiring one. Again, we'll talk about that in a minute. And you're in charge of your show's own press campaign. So CNC, what they don't have the resources to do is to kind of individually pitch 600 shows to press, but they're very good at finding kind of overarching themes or talking about shows week by week and kind of getting the programme out there. It's always really good if press hear from you about your show specifically as well. And we're kind of in the middle of that, which I'll come on to in a minute. An important thing to know is that all 3 of those kind of people or teams talk to journalists. So CNC are having conversations with them a lot. We're talking to press who get in contact with us with queries and questions, and you'll almost definitely be talking to journalists as well when you're telling them about your show. So they hear from lots of different people, but that's kind of the structure. So a little bit about what we do. It's really important, first of all, to say when I talk about the press team is mainly just me. It's a team of one. I do have a little bit of help. So we have press and marketing placements who help it in the office, and my role crosses over a little bit with arts industry, even though they're separate ticketing things. We do work quite closely together because we both book comps. And I also work with the sales department and the comms department as well. But sort of primarily when you email press at, it's me on the other end. So what we do, book press tickets. If you're booking in any journalists, they'll come through us and we'll be responsible for physically putting that ticket in the system. We also log all the press coverage and reviews. So we try to catch everything that gets published about every single show. We get reviews up on the press board. So if you've come to Vault before, you probably have seen the kind of press board on the way in where we have sort of splashes and stars and quotes. We're responsible for kind of making sure that happens and those reviews actually get up on there. We act as a go-between between C&C and shows. So say if C&C have been chatting to a journalist who really wants to hear about climate change shows, they usually come to us, ask for a list, and we kind of set them up in contact with those companies. And equally, a journalist might come to me and ask something, and I'm the kind of go-between between them and a show. So we're kind of the in-between person. We let journalists know about any changes. So let's say you've updated your show information, changed your press release, you've got a press night when you didn't have one before, you've changed your mind about whether reviewers can come to your show. We're the kind of communicator of that. And we're also a supportive ear if you're worried about your reviews. So if you're just kind of having a bit of stress about it, we're here to help. And we can also manage relationships with reviewers if something goes a bit wrong or something's been published that is sort of inaccurate and you need to get it changed. We can handle those tricky conversations. So we are basically kind of at the little melting pot right at the centre of all press activity. So why think about press? And I think this is a really important one because at this stage, you might well still be making your show. You might not be sure yet if you want reviewers in, which is completely legitimate. So even if you're not opening your show for reviewers, and that is something you could decide, and we'll talk about in a sec, press interest can still be really useful. So gaining that preview coverage, so ending up in those things to see this week lists, or kind of themed articles about different themes and ideas at Vault, they can still really help sell tickets. So they just make audiences aware that your show is on, which is really, really good. And they can raise awareness of key messages or themes. If you're, presenting a show that's about a real life topic, or you're really trying to kind of raise awareness of an issue, it's again really worth kind of getting press on your side about that, even if you don't really want them reviewing the show at this stage. And even if you're not opening your shows to reviewers, press can raise your profile as an artist. So it might be really useful just for them to just kind of know about your career in general and kind of what you're doing. You can platform upcoming projects as well. So if you've got a show on this month, for example, and you've got press coming, it's always worth mentioning that you're doing something at Vault, and vice versa. If you're using Vault to kind of then launch a tour, for example, it's really useful to get that traction. And lastly, obviously, you can get critical feedback. So if you are looking for reviews, this is a really good place to do it. Journalists are really involved and sort of engage with the festival. So the way I've sort of structured this slideshow is into a bit of a timeline, because your press jobs are going to be quite different depending on what stage you're at in the festival process. So we're going to talk a little bit about press stuff to do pre-festival, so stuff you might be focusing on right now, stuff to do in festival, and then just a little bit of kind of stuff post-festival, because although you'll really want to have a sleep and probably a week off, which is completely legitimate, there are a few things that are worth doing before you totally check out. Great, so let's do pre-festival. So pre-festival tasks, this is kind of the stuff you'll be thinking about probably now. If your show's in March, obviously this timeline does shift back a little bit as well. Kind of at the moment, kind of going into sort of January, February, you'll probably be thinking about the following things. So first of all, you'll be making some decisions. So do you hire a PR or not, or do it all yourself? And do you invite reviewers or not, which is definitely something to think about. You'll probably be identifying press-worthy features, so sort of thinking about the angles of your show that press might like or enjoy or be sort of engaged with. You'll be writing your press release, which is always a big one, and sending out your press release, the kind of other half of that job. So reviewers, I think it's really worth saying here that people do often get a little bit scared of reviewers. It can feel like a really kind of big sort of closed off world, and that, you know, it's a whole section of people coming to sort of judge your show. It's really not that at all. I think it's important to say here that reviewers who visit Vault regularly know what the festival is. They know it's a chance to see really exciting new work, and that stuff's really fresh and kind of, you know, just come out of the box. That said, you don't have to invite reviewers into your show. So if you are doing a work in progress show, it might be that you've got a kind of future run plan for something like Edinburgh, where you kind of really want to save the bulk of your press for that. And you want to use this to kind of iron out stuff and get feedback. You might equally just not want, might be to invite programmers, and you might be like, actually now's not the right time for press, and that's totally legitimate. So yeah, don't be scared of reviewers. They totally know what the festival is, but equally there is no pressure from us to invite them if you don't want to. So some pros and cons if you're kind of in that tricky situation at the moment of trying to debate whether you want reviewers in, and this is something some companies really stress about pre-Christmas. I think it's worth chatting about the kind of reasons to do it versus reasons not to do it. So pros, that can help shape the show for the future. And it can also help build that show hype to sell tickets as well, either at Vault or in the future if you're planning on doing the show again. That can also really help you secure a future life for the show. So if you know you want to tour it next year, or you're quite interested in Edinburgh, or you'd love it to go somewhere bigger in London for a longer run, sometimes press reviews can really help with that. And it might also allow you to reach new audiences. So there might be audiences who don't know you, but do read the stage, for example. So right up there kind of gets you on their radar. A few kind of cons or things to think about. It's really hard to invite someone to re-review a show unless it's drastically changed. And even then, that can be quite tricky. So if you are kind of feeling on the fence and you're feeling like the show is not quite ready, wait till it is. There's no rush. And yeah, journalists will happily come another time. The other thing to think about is that it may make you ineligible for some future press interest. So for example, if you've had a show that's been heavily reviewed in London and you then take it to Edinburgh, that can limit you from some awards like the Fringe First Awards. It's not a kind of done deal. With the Fringe First, there's kind of a caveat that if the show has drastically changed, they'll still consider it, but it's worth sort of chatting over with a PR if you have one, or if you want to email me and have a conversation about it. If Edinburgh is something you're really thinking about, that's absolutely fine. I'm happy to make time for a chat, but just sort of to flag that and make you aware. So the other big decision alongside reviews is PR or no PR. So a PR, for people who don't know, because this can be where we sort of get a bit sort of jingoey and there's lots of catchphrases being thrown around. A PR is a public relations expert. They're someone who is essentially hired to look after your press for you. So they'll write your press release, they'll pitch your shows to journalist preview coverage, they'll keep track of your reviews and log them and kind of flag them for you. And they'll also come up with ideas for generating coverage. If your show is really visual, they might suggest a photo call. They've got really good relationships with journalists. They know who's writing about what. They've got their fingers on the pulse. So if they know your show's got a particular theme and Lynn Gardner is pitching an article to the stage about that next week, they'll try and get you in front of her for that. So they're kind of your go-between for you and the press, and they can be very useful for that. So yeah, pros and cons of hiring a PR. So the pros are that they have relationships with press that you might not have. So obviously you might have developed sort of relationships with journalists through doing shows before, and that's great. But if you're brand new to kind of making theatre for press, they kind of have those ins. They know how and where to pitch for features as well. They might know who is more likely to pick something up, who is kind of maybe more likely to get a Q&A on your team with a certain journalist. And the kind of big advantage for them is that they handle all your press for you. So you can just focus on the show. They will handle your ticketing, they will handle your release. They will basically just take it off your plate, which is a big win. The kind of downside to that, and the flip side of the coin, is it costs money. So yeah, PRs don't work for free. They can often be quite a big expense. And there are also no guarantees. You're definitely more likely to get coverage with a PR, but you can never say that with certainty. They are pitching alongside lots of other PRs as well. So it's, you know, still a really crowded field. One thing I would definitely say is to get recommendations of PRs or look at their past work. because the right PR for one show might not be the right PR for another show. Some are really like amazing shit hot at writing, like new writing or musicals or circus, whereas that might not be in someone else's skill set. So it's worth kind of looking at what kind of clients they've worked for in the past, what kind of press articles they've brought in. Does that match up with your show and your ideas? So we've talked a bit about hiring a PR versus not. Let's assume that you're not hiring a PR and doing it all yourself. Or to be fair, even if you are hiring a PR, this will probably be the first conversation you have with them. And this will be about kind of press-worthy features of your show. So there are lots of reasons why press might want to come and see your show, and it's kind of narrowing and whittling it down to what makes it unique and special. There are obviously about 500 shows at Vault, and you might have similar themes to lots of the others in the programme, but yours will still be really different and engaging. So it's just kind of finding what that angle is. So some things to think about are the story of the show, the kind of most obvious one, what's it about? The themes, what kind of big ideas is it looking at? I would also think about the relationship to wider current events. Is there something going on in the news right now that is really kind of relevant, either intentionally or not? And it's definitely worth kind of keeping an eye on the news and what's going on. Artists involved in past credits, that's definitely one to sort of flag as well. I think artists often don't like talking about that stuff, but any recognisable names or even shows you've been in the past, they might have been, you know, a certain blogger's favourite show that they saw. So it's really worth flagging those. And also think about what makes it exciting at Vault as well. Is it a premiere of a new show? That's really cool. Is it a team who've been to Vault before and kind of had a bit of a festival favourite who are coming back for something new? That's also really great. So all things worth thinking about. So yeah, press-worthy features of your show, just worth thinking about your story, your themes, the relationship to any sort of wider current events. I have a feeling at the moment with like the news changing so much so rapidly, this is probably going to be a big one. Any artists involved and their kind of past credits. And as I said, if it's a premiere, that's really exciting. Even though loads of shows at Vault are brand new, I think world premiere still sounds really good. So it's worth putting in your press release. So writing a press release. So this might be something that is completely brand new to some artists at Vault. It is something that we really, really try and give you as much support on as possible. The first thing to say about press releases is that they're quite different from marketing copy. They're very factual. They're almost like a little bit of a blueprint for a journalist with the kind of who, what, where, why, when. So if they want to go and write anything about your show, be it a review or a news story or a write-up, they have the tools to do that. So they do read as quite dry, which sort of sounds a bit counterintuitive for something that's kind of comms-based and selling your show, but that is the way they're laid out. So along with pitching the show and getting journalists excited about it, they also need to include all that really basic key info. So the show time, the date, the location, but also who to contact for tickets. Usually that's you. Any links to images, anything like that. Some PRs, when they write them, even include things like the transport links and the nearest kind of buses and tubes and stuff like that can be really useful. So imagine they know absolutely nothing. It's that kind of guide. So there's a little bit of a release checklist. Big thing to flag is that we have a press toolkit on vaultfestival.com/resources. If you go on press and media, we've got a little kind of step-by-step guide to writing a press release. And that includes kind of all these different headers and also some past examples of ones that we think are particularly good. The other thing to say is that I will always happily read over your press release. So if you're writing one for the first time and you're finding it a bit confusing, please don't worry, have a go at it, do a first draft, send it to me. I will happily read it and send it back to you with some notes. Usually on your release, you want to include a few things. So the first thing is a header. It might be an image or just kind of an interesting tagline. You want an opening paragraph that is essentially everything that the show is kind of about in a paragraph. So if the journalist was only going to read that one paragraph or skim read, what do you need them to know? Name of the show, the kind of key things it's about, and that it's at Vault Festival and the dates, basically. You want to then go into the who, the what, who and why. So who is in the show, where did the inspiration come from, why are you presenting it now, all those kind of interesting details. I would then make a bit of time to talk about any awards or reviews or past credits from your team. If you're a brand new team that have just formed as a company and this is your first show, again, that's really exciting. So you can include that here. So don't kind of feel like if you don't have anything to put here that it's a bad thing. It's also really exciting to be kind of new and fresh, and journalists do look for that. At the end of your release, there'll be something called Notes to Editors, which is a little kind of section, which is all the kind of listings info. So it'll be, where is the show on? They know it's Vault Festival, but which specific venue, what time, are there any days it's not on, ticket prices, maybe the link to the website. And then there'll also be some kind of link to images. So this could literally be, if you don't have any images to go with your show, it could literally just be the image you're using on the Vault Festival website, and you could attach it to your email with your press release. If you've got something like headshots of your cast, or you've taken some marketing images to kind of sell the show on social media, you could always include a little Dropbox link to those. It's not super important, but if you've got them, it's worth putting them in the release. So a few tips for your press release. The biggest one is assuming the person reading has seconds, not minutes. If you remember, there's about 500 shows at Vault, and that is just a small fraction of the shows going on in London. And then London is a small fraction of the shows going on in the UK. And some of these journalists get pitched shows all over the UK and possibly even beyond. They sometimes get hundreds, if not thousands, of releases a week. So they're not going to read all of it in detail. So assume that they're going to be spending 10 to 15 seconds, get the really key info up high and kind of really clear. We would also say keep it to a max of 2 pages. Sometimes releases are a bit longer, and I think you do have to sort of go, on a bit of a sort of trial basis with this. If you've got a massive team and you want to include credits, sometimes it's quite hard to condense it down. But ideally, a kind of 2-pager means they can just print it off double-sided and it's just kind of there. So 2 pages is sort of a bit of a golden rule. I would say to attach your release to your emails as a PDF. There are people who disagree with me. There are PRs who swear by like copying and pasting it into an email. So having a little message, your signature, and then your kind of 2 pages underneath. I personally think a PDF means if they want to click it and save it to a desktop somewhere and just sort of have a folder of all the releases that they've got from Vault, for example, it's really easy for them to do that. So my personal view is that that's the best way to do it, especially if you're in a festival and there's a lot going on. Links to images. If you've got images, rather than sending loads of photos with your email, it'll almost definitely get caught in someone's spam. So if you can put images in a Dropbox or a Google Drive link, again, feel free to message me about this on the press email if you're not sure how to do that, and I'll talk you through it. And you just include a link in your email that they can click onto, and all the images are there to download. That's much easier, and it sort of stops your stuff getting lost or jamming up their spam filters, which never goes too well. The other thing is that you might well update your press release. The press release that you kind of write and send out might change if your cast changes, for example, or I know some people write a release just to upload to Eventatron for going on sale, which you don't have to do, but some people put an initial one up and then later want to change it to include cast info or kind of changed credits or things like that. Absolutely fine. We keep all your press releases in-house, so just make sure that if you do update it, you send us the new one, just so that we don't give the wrong one to a journalist and they ask for it. So inviting reviewers. So there'll be lots and lots of press who are interested in your show. So we'll talk about kind of being targeted. But I think a really big thing to say is to keep it personal. So never ever BCC a press release out to just a massive list of reviewers. It's annoying and it's a really frustratingly long job, but it is worth putting in the time to send one email per reviewer, addressing the reviewer by name, or dear editor if you don't know, just so it seems like you're specifically inviting their publication rather than just kind of blanket sending it out. We would also recommend leaving time for follow-ups. So a big question I get asked is, when should I send my press release? We say about 4 to 6 weeks out is recommended. A month out is usually more than fine if you're at Vault and you're in a sort of festival environment, because press are kind of browsing the whole programme anyway. But yeah, 4 to 6 weeks out just gives you time to nudge people kind of 2 weeks out, or, before you go into rehearsals. So you've got a little bit of time where it doesn't feel like you're hassling people, but you can follow up. And then the last thing I say is be targeted, and who would enjoy your show and why. There are tons and tons and tons of blogs and publications out there. If you're doing a straight new writing piece with no music in it, musical theatre review are probably not the right press outlet to invite to your show. They'll probably just be a bit confused getting a press release. So do kind of have a little research and think about the right blogs a really good way to start this is to look at our resources page on the press and media section of the website. And we've got a list of pre-accredited reviewers who are all reviewers who review with Vault regularly. And that could be a really good basis to kind of just add some publications to your list that you know are coming to Vault and seeing stuff, and that you can go away, do the research, figure out if they're the right fit, find the right email address, and kind of create a list from there. I'd also really recommend looking at Twitter, look at who's tweeting about Vault Festival, and also about look at shows that are similar to you, not just at Vault but elsewhere, and look at who's reviewing them. Those can all be really good ways of sort of starting that research. You can also email me and I'll happily sort of help and give you some names and good directions to go in as well. Cool, next slide. So things to remember: follow up, definitely. Always leave time to kind of a couple of weeks out or a week out, just send a little nudge to journalists who haven't responded, just saying, just a reminder, this is on next week, I'm reattaching the press release. Don't hassle them. So don't send email after email. Definitely don't get on Twitter and kind of pitch them unless they are soliciting it. Some journalists say, I'm going to vote for Vault Festival, what should I see? That's a great invitation to kind of tweet at them, but don't just send Lynn Gardner 10 tweets a day, for example, trying to get her to come see your show. She won't like it. Don't take it personally if you don't get a response. This is a really hard one because it kind of feels, especially now, making theatre post-COVID, it can feel a bit kind of mean when someone doesn't even reply to say no thank you. It's not personal, it's literally just that they're getting thousands and thousands of releases, and quite often you get lost in the noise. And I would also just don't think too much just about reviewers. So are there arts journalists who do kind of features or news that might have an interest in your show? So there are lots of journalists out there who don't really review, but they do kind of write-ups and sort of diary stories and things like that. And equally, are there other shows in the Vault programme you could approach for a joint push? Do you have a really niche theme that your play focuses on, and there's another company in the programme that have something quite similar? Could you join forces and kind of look for writers who are writing about that stuff? A really good example of this is a show called Vespertilio, which did the festival in 2019, which was about bats. It was kind of a queer love story, but kind of themed around like the last bat in the world. It's like really, really great, did really well, had lovely write-ups. They did get a write-up in The Guardian, but it was from the nature section, and it was a journalist who specifically was like really interested in this bat and the inspiration behind the show, and then kind of made like, you know, mentioned the show in the process, but didn't review it. But that was still an amazing write-up and got it in front of loads of people who probably would never have come across it otherwise. So, you know, really worth doing. Just gonna admit to the waiting room. So do think about those themes, and are there journalists writing about that stuff who might not be reviewers per se? So we've done all the kind of pre-festival stuff. You're now in the festival. You're probably also making your show and juggling many plates and are really stressed, which is something we totally appreciate. So what do you do in the festival to kind of keep on top of press? Is there stuff you have to be thinking about? The answer is yes, but thankfully with press, the more prepped you are kind of going into it, the less work there is at this point, which is really nice. So there are a few things to chat about here. There's the final checklist, which sounds a bit ominous, but I'm going to cover what that means. There's press night. Are you going to have a press night, and what happens if you do? There's using the Vault press team and how you can use us to make the festival a bit easier for yourselves, and what we're here to kind of do and to support you during live time. And also dealing with reviews and staying sane doing it, which I think is going to be a big thing for a lot of people, and I'm sure we'll have lots of questions about that at the end of the workshop. So a final checklist. It's really easy to get bogged down in all the other show admin ahead of your opening night, and especially because a press release is one of the first things you do. It's like 6 weeks out from the show. You probably will send it before you've even gone into rehearsals. It can sort of fall to the back of everything you're thinking about, which is completely fine. But it's a really good time once you get into the festival to just kind of make sure that everything is in place, so that when a reviewer comes to your show, they can publish their review as quickly as possible. They're not waiting on anything from you, so that, you know, as soon as they've seen the show, they go home, write their review. There's nothing to stop them getting it straight up on a website and helping you shift some tickets. So things on your final checklist. First of all, follow-ups. Have you left a bit of time to send an email a week or 2 weeks out to anyone who's not responded? This doesn't have to be long. It can literally be in the same kind of email thread that you sent out initially with your press release. It can just be, hey, hope you're well. Just wanted to remind you this is coming up next week. If you've got a gap in your schedule, we'd love to see you there. Here's the release reattached. Production photography. So have you organised some production shots? I know this is expensive and something to think about, but having some images where if someone comes and reviews the show, they can put an image accompanying it is really, really good. Even if you just get a few basic shots in tech on an iPhone, it's better than nothing. At the very least, just make sure there is an image, even if it's your kind of hero image from the website, available, just because sometimes reviewers won't publish unless they've got an image to go with it. So press tickets, this is also a really good time to look at your list of everyone you think's coming and double check with me that I've definitely booked them in. You should be getting confirmations as and when I book a ticket. So it's really worth kind of putting those in a folder in your inbox. But if you want to, on the week of your show, just say, hey, I'm expecting these reviewers, could you double check? I'm very happy to do that, just to make sure no one's been left off. And it's also worth thinking about any pre-show info that ticket holders need. This is mainly for immersive shows or interactive shows. But if you know, for example, that journalists should be getting a message from box office where they have to bring something, come via a different exit, they're all booked in on our box office system, so that should catch journalists, but very occasionally a journalist might not have an email address or it might go through their editor. So anything you need to flag, it's worth doing that with me and I can make sure that those journalists get all that information. But as I say, this is really for kind of immersive shows that are very specific, kind of getting information. So press night, lots of questions I get asked at the moment are, should I have a press night? Some shows at Vault do and some don't. To kind of explain the landscape, if you're doing a big 4-week run in London, you normally will have a press night to kind of encourage press to come on a certain night, make a big event of it. Vault, obviously your runs are much shorter and you're competing with a lot of other shows, so plenty of shows, don't bother. You can and you don't have to, and there are pros and cons to both. The pros of press night is that you can stop press coming in before you're ready. So if your press night is the Wednesday of your run, press kind of know that that's the official opening and they're probably not going to come on the Tuesday. So that can be quite good, and it can give your casting crew something to aim for as well. If they know that kind of the main press push is going to be a specific night, that can be quite useful. It can create a sense of a bit of an event, which can be quite nice for you as a company, but equally can be quite nice for press. And it also gets you onto editors' calendars. So some editors will literally have a calendar of just press nights happening in London, and it can just get you onto that. The main kind of con with picking a press night at Vault is the sheer size of our programme means that you will not get every reviewer who wants to come and see your show coming on that specific night. You will get people writing in and going, I can't make it on that day, can I come another day? And the more flexible you are with that, and you know, the more flexible you are letting reviewers in on different dates, the more likely you are to get reviewers in. If you're very strict about them only coming on a certain date, that can be trickier, and some of them will end up having to pass, especially if you're a very short 1 or 2 night run and you're, you know, convinced that you want one of your 2 nights to be the press night and not the other. You will miss out on some press. So a few press night tips if you do decide to go ahead and have one. The first one is to let us know. It's really useful for us to know if the desk at the front of Vault Festival, as people come in, it's going to be particularly busy, especially if press are all there for one show and really need like certain information. We can just make sure that we're kind of really on it. We know we've got any show information to hand. I usually have a copy of press releases when it's press night in case I need to look up any information really quickly. Make sure you've got details for your cast and crew accessible. So if you're not doing a cast list for your run, but you're having a press night, I would just at least make one available that night. So anyone who needs to kind of check spellings or names has got that accessible. Production shots, if you've got them, send them before your press night, like the day before, or immediately after. What you don't want to do is give editors any reason to stall your reviews. You want to make sure that they've got everything and that the only person they're chasing to publish is the reviewer. So yeah, you don't want them waiting on you for anything. So ticket booking and how that works at Vault. This can be a little bit confusing because press book tickets with us in 3 ways. So the first way is that press come to us and we book them in. So Lynn Gardner might email me on the press that email with a list of week 7 shows that she wants to see, and I would book them in for her. The other 2 things that happen, firstly, the more rare one is that press go to CNC, our PR company, so they might have a better relationship, or have a kind of existing relationship with Chloe as a PR, which means that they just send their list to her. She then passes them on to me, and it's the exact same system, so we book them all in. And the third way, and this is how we get most of our bookings during lifetime, is that press book via you. So you sent your press release out, press have come back, said, yep, would love to come to your show, can I come on the 16th? On our resources page on the press and media section, there is a press ticketing request form. It's a little Google form, it's super simple. You fill that out, it comes to me, I book it in. However they book, we're always the ones processing those tickets. So it'll always be me who's physically putting them in the system for you. And I'll always let you know when I've done it. So if press come to me requesting a ticket, I'll come to you and ask your permission for booking it in. If you send me a press ticket request, I'll always come back to you and just be like, yep, it's booked in, just so for your own peace of mind, it's been done. So the press resources page, just to flag it, get familiar with it. It has really, really useful information on it. It's a really good kind of resource of tips, how to write a press release, how to find journalists, but also it's got those forms on. So it's got that ticket booking form. So if you put in your ticket requests there, we'll process them. We'll send you it's kind of an automated email. I do them via a mail merge, but you'll get an email just confirming the details of the booking and that it's gone through, so you can check it. There's also something called the broadcast request form. So if you're doing any filming, any photography, any kind of audio recording, making a podcast, anything like that, you can let us know via this form. I'm also the point person on site for letting the rest of the Vault team know about that. So if you want to film the first night of your show, for example, you let me know via this form, and I would tell front of house and the tech guys and everyone on site that needs to know that that's happening. So this is a little bit less relevant until you actually get to your show, but it's worth knowing it's there. And pre-accreditation, there's also something on our resources page called the pre-accreditation list, which can be a bit confusing for people. We've not been aware of that term before. If you've been to Edinburgh or any other fringe festival, you might have heard the term pre-accreditation.
A lot of it's what I was expecting. A lot of it I know already.
So
just reinforces what my plan is.
Something.
The plan I have is the right plan, and that I know what I'm doing.
That you'll have been asked to opt in or out of on Eventstrom. So when you filled in your press and marketing form, this is something you will have had a yes/no tick box on. You can change this preference at any time by emailing me. So if you've opted into the accreditation list, anyone on the list on our website will be booked straight in when your request are on. So if you've opted in and Lynn Gardner, for example, comes to me and wants your show, I'll still tell you to opt in, but I will book the ticket first. So I will book her straight in. I'll send you an email letting you know that she's booked in. If you're opted out, any press tickets, no matter the outlet, have to be run past you first for permission. So if you want to okay every single journalist who requests a ticket, you can opt out of pre-accreditation, and it's absolutely fine to do either one. I will say that we recommend opting in for a really simple reason, and that's just that if a reviewer wants to come last minute to your show and you're opted out and we can't get hold of you to clear it, we can't let them in. So if you've opted out and Lynn Gardner comes by the desk and goes, a show's been cancelled, could I go and see this instead, and I can't get hold of you on the phone, I won't let her in if I don't have your permission. So it's really worth thinking about that just for those last minute reviewers. The accredited list is on the press and media resources page. It's a pretty comprehensive list, but I will say that everyone, sorry, just checking the chat there. Everyone on that list is known to Vault festivals. They're either kind of big reviewers, broadsheets, national press, all their bloggers who have had a history of the festival, so they know us really, really well. We trust them. They're not, coming in, and we don't just add anyone to it. So if we've got new bloggers this year, we'll always run them past you first. So it's a very select list. So a few do's and don'ts for festival lifetime. Do let us know about any changes to your press info as soon as you can. but even if it's last minute. So as an example, last year we had a company who were totally going to let in press until the week before, and then had to recast really suddenly. A cast member got ill, and it just decided that it was just putting too much stress on the cast to have reviewers in, which is completely fine. They just let me know, and I emailed all the reviewers we had booked, explained the situation, persuaded them to go see some other shows. So it was all fine. No one's evenings got ruined. So even if it is a last minute thing, do let us know, because we're here to have those conversations for you. Do make sure we've got the press tickets via the request form. Please don't email them to box office, because they just won't get seen. They're handling so many ticket requests every single day. So if they go through the form, they actually end up on a spreadsheet, so it's impossible to lose them. So yeah, use the form. It's really helpful. And those broadcast requests, let us know. It's all like a little bit complicated with broadcast, because if you're doing something like filming your show, and we have to make audience aware. So if we know, we can tell front of house, they can help you put up signs. It's all just way simpler, and you don't run into, you know, things that potentially delay your show opening or mess up your shots or anything like that. Things not to do. Try not to go it alone. So if you're worried about something, please tell us. We're here to help. We might not be able to, you know, ask for a review to be taken down if you just don't like the review, but we can certainly talk to a reviewer if they've spelled someone's name wrong, or the review is, you know, is giving away a massive spoiler. Those are conversations we can very tactfully have. So, you know, please don't go it alone on that stuff. Please do talk to us. And equally, we do try and catch everything that comes through in terms of coverage. As you can imagine, it's really hard. There are 500 shows. So if you feel like you've got a 5-star review in the stage and we've not spotted it, we probably are getting to it. We're probably actively searching, but you can flag it with us. It's not annoying to let us know. Sometimes it just means we see it that bit quicker. So yeah, please let us know if things like that come in. So reviews, this is a big one. So first things first, I think it's really important to remember that all reviews, good or bad, and this includes The Stage or Lynn Gardner or The Guardian coming to see your show, they are just one person's opinion. And the whole focus on the good and ignore the bad is given as advice quite often for a good reason, even if it is hard to follow. So good reviews. Star ratings are really great, but don't forget to look for good quotes too. Quite often, and I think more and more increasingly now, a lot of reviewers aren't using star ratings. So it's really worth just combing the reviews and looking for those kind of pull quotes, because they're still really useful for your marketing. We'll also track those, as we said, but do let us know if we've missed any. Use splashes. So these are the little strips of paper you see with the kind of stars and quotes on them. Print some of those out and get them up on your flyers and your posters, as well as on your social media. So, you know, your posters will be around the whole site. Get those little splashes up. Bad reviews, big one. So first thing I'd always say with these, stop, breathe, take 5 minutes. It'll probably feel like the end of the world when you first see it. It's not. A really important thing to say is never respond to journalists directly via email or social media. Even if you feel it's really unfair or unwarranted, you're risking more damage and jeopardizing those future relationships. We're here to help if you have concerns. If you're really upset by a review, come and talk to us. At the very least, we can be kind of an ear for you to vent to. At best, if something's gone really wrong, for example, they've given away a huge plot point, we can talk to the reviewer and tactfully kind of ask them to make some changes. We can't just get the review taken down if you didn't like it, unfortunately, but we can, you know, correct anything that is like actively wrong. So please do talk to us about it. And then I also wanted to talk a little bit about the meh reviews. So the reviews where it sort of reads like a 4-star, but it's a 3, which always feel very annoying. So not every review is going to be brilliantly written, and it's not every review is going to get what you're trying to do. And it can be really frustrating when a review isn't bad, but it's also just not particularly useful either. It just sort of sits in that kind of middle ground of grey area. Brush it off. It's not the worst thing. If there are valuable quotes, you can still use them. So if a review is sort of a bit meh, but has got a really nice sentence about performer or an aspect of the show, you can still absolutely pull that out. That's all good. A really big one, and if there's one thing you take away from this workshop, please make it this slide, is protect your well-being. So the focus should always be on you and your team and your show and what's best for those individuals and that project. So if you need to, wait till after your run to coverage search. We definitely recommend doing it and keeping a kind of record of your reviews. but we do it for you. So you can always just ask us that, or you can always wait till the dust is settled and you're in a kind of post-show mindset to go and deep dive into that. It can sometimes be really helpful not to read reviews, good or bad, during the run. That's something more and more companies do now. I personally think it's a really good shout, keeps you focused on the show. If you decide not to do that, do remember to let other people know. And I say this as someone who has been kind of a writer and producer. Sometimes when you're really not engaging, actors get really excited, and if you've got a 5-star review, they want to shout about it. So do just kind of flag to your team if you're opting out of that, just so they can be aware. Don't engage with bad press directly. We can never say this enough, but do just keep us informed. It's what we're here for. And at the very least, I'm very happy for you to vent to me if you're a bit annoyed. Okay, so you've done your show. I put the picture of gin here for a reason. It's probably what you're going to be doing right now. So you've finished your show. This is kind of March onwards, or really whenever you finish. There's not loads to do in terms of post-festival press, but there are some things I think are just worth making a note of. The first one is to log your coverage. So think about who came to the show, who wrote particularly good reviews, and not just the outlets or the kind of publications, but also the journalists, because some journalists and bloggers do hop around. So knowing that this person wrote a great review through Younger Theatre, if in a year's time they're writing for the stage, that's really useful. You've already got a bit of an in. So make notes of their names as well. So friendly reviewers are great. Really try and keep those relationships and build on them. And the most important thing is to take what's useful. Obviously take your good reviews, that's great. Really think about how they can help your show in the future in terms of programming. But equally, reviews that you feel might not be necessarily good reviews, but are constructive or give some good feedback. If that's useful to you, take it. You might feel they just haven't got the show, and that's completely fine. But if you kind of notice a pattern of the same thing coming up in lots of reviews, sometimes it can be good to kind of bring that to team debrief and just sort of think about it as audience feedback more generally. So a few top tips for Vault. The first one is this is an environment like no other. I've worked doing kind of press and marketing for lots of different places, including Edinburgh Fringe, and honestly, Vault is really different and really special. Journalists quite often like to look at the Vault programme because it's so big now and look at kind of themes or common links across it. And it's just a bit of an easier way in than trying to navigate 500 shows separately. So one thing I'd definitely say is to look at the programme as a whole, think about your themes, your ideas, things that make your company stand out, and look at other companies who are doing the same. And if you can, join up together and try and think about how you're approaching press, maybe jointly, and sharing some of that workload. A big thing, again, I can't say enough, is that Vault reviewers know that works in early stages. There are reviewers for publications that specifically will ask to cover Vault for that publication and will be down every single night, seeing as many shows as possible. They know that the work is experimental. They know that it's work they probably won't see on other stages. They're not expecting to come and see something that they would see at the National. So don't be afraid of them. Like they totally embrace the festival vibe. And again, use us. So whether that's helping find coverage, booking your tickets, all the stuff we're here to do, you know, we're here for that. But please do contact us if you need to have a chat, if you want some advice, if you're struggling with press bookings, if you have written a press release you're a bit unsure of and you want me to have a look over it for you, can absolutely do that. If you're in a situation that you're unsure of, I can't say this enough, please come to me and chat to me about it. If you know you're in a kind of difficult discussion with a journalist or something's gone wrong, if something's gone really wrong, we have a PR company that help as well. So you know, if you've got a review in the stage which has given away a really key plot point and that's an absolute disaster, you know, there are people who can have that difficult discussion for you. Please don't feel you need to take it on yourself.